Reddit by Reddit recap. Lawyers of Reddit, what case you wish you never won? I used to prosecute neglect cases in big city in America for child protection services. After a few high-profile cases where young kids ended up dead at the hands of family members, CPS starting asking us to file on pretty much everybody. I understand why, but I wish they would have stood up to the bad press instead of allowing it to dictate who they brought to court. From that point on, I would say about half my cases, even though a cause of action existed, I felt guilty for winning. We took a copyright case to trial twice, and then an appeal, and won every time. The case was on contingency, the client doesn't pay unless you win. We have spent years trying to collect the judgment from the defendant so we can get paid. We have a judgment for our own fees that is close to $1 million. Throwing good money after bad. The defendant hid his assets very effectively, put all hard assets into LLCs, got paid hundreds of thousands a year in cash and services to avoid banks, etc. He died of COVID-19 on Friday, and was likely savvy enough to avoid probate. All of this is a gross oversimplification, but the TLDR is we won a case 3 times, and have never been paid a cent because the loser was very shady and died. So we will likely get nothing for the client or ourselves. The one thing this post is teaching me is that I could never be a lawyer because I have a conscience, and I mean no offense by this. I am sorry that you folks have to live with these things. I know I am not mentally strong enough. Worked for a large law firm. We won freedom for a suspected terrorist who probably did commit a very serious atrocity, but politics got in the way of convicting him. Sorry, cannot say which case this was. I've been living by the adage that politics poisons everything since the late 90s, and honesty, it's held completely true over the last 20 years and likely since well before then. I represented a man accused of murder. I was able to get him off on a technicality during his arrest, but it was pretty clear he was guilty of the murder. I truly regret getting him off because he was most definitely guilty. You followed the law. The arresting cops made a mistake. They failed the due process. It sucks, but you did your job correctly. Even if you have to free a guilty man, if you did it by the books, you are a good lawyer. I was representing a homeless dude whom the government was trying to get custody over so they could force him into rehab. It was a bit rare in that government rarely bothers due to the high expenses. You have medical reviews. The fact it has to go before a judge and the defendant must be provided with a lawyer, and the low odds of success since no one likes the idea of forcible institutionalization. In this case, the guy was jacking off outside windows and stealing packages. The former, more so than the latter, had gotten the critical mass of neighbors to push the city to actually try for custody. Pretty easy win due to the very high bar to actually get someone for more than a short-term mental health hold. In all honesty, I felt like the city wasn't trying that hard, so much as going through the motions so they could tell the voters we tried. Did not feel great looking at all the folks who had packed into the courtroom as they realized the guy was not going to be forced into rehab and would instead be right back outside their window. But it got worse. The homeless guy went on a victory lap of jacking off. Local police were called during the part of the victory lap where he was outside the window of a minor, and a frustrated father kicked the shout of the homeless guy. The homeless guy went on to prevail in a civil suit for damages against the guy who beat his that I was not part of, used the money to buy drugs, and was killed while wandering around a freeway ramp high as F. Long story short, if I had lost in the following 6 months, one guy wouldn't have to take a plea deal on the beating. 2 poor dudes who were coming home late from a landscaping job wouldn't have had to deal with the trauma of running a guy over, and the homeless guy would have been getting clean as opposed to getting introduced to the bumper of a medium-duty pickup doing about 55 miles per hour late one night. Also very annoyed that EA never just ran the guy on the indecent exposure issues, put him up on that, and then offer him a plea deal where if he does inpatient rehab, no jail. The whole approach by various city officials just reeked of don't really want to win, but can't appear like we aren't doing anything because the primary is in 8 months. I used to do divorces, mostly. I'm not cut out for that work, but it's the job I could get out of law school. A guy came in for a divorce and seemed, by all accounts, really nice. He claimed that they had $50K in cash in their safe and that his wife had taken it out when she left the house. His ex-wife never worked, so seemed reasonable she would take the money to help pay bills, start over, etc. 6 months in though, when we were finalizing property, his true colors started to show, refusing to let her have the toaster, arguing over giving her anything even though she hadn't worked their entire 15-year marriage, telling her she could have half of the expensive plants she tended to only if she came and got them herself without help. For reference, these plants were in a greenhouse and some weighed upwards of 100 pounds each. She probably weighed 100 pounds herself. Extremely meek woman in her 60s. The other lawyer and I finally get everything settled except the $50K. My client says she took it. Ex-wife says she did initially but then put it back on the advice of her attorney. So we go to trial just on this $50K. I cross-examine her elderly parents, treat them as hostile, really go all out, up against a veteran attorney who had been doing this for 30 plus years while I was brand new. I had to show my worth. In the end, the judge ended up declaring that the $50K was lost money. No one, technically, wins. 1 hour later my client waltzes into the office and pays his $15K bill all in $100 bills. I just stared silently at the money while he smiled widely at me, thanked me for helping him and then left. I quit practicing law entirely 3 months later. I still think about his ex-wife, who honestly seemed sweet and lovely, and hope she's okay. Was a labor lawyer for some time and we had a no exception policy against using the company credit card for personal expenses. Everyone knows you get fired for it because they beat it into you with frequent training, make you sign stuff, etc. We fired a guy who was a few months from retirement, and his union filed for arbitration. Arbitration is kind of a joke and any labor lawyer will tell you that no arbitrator would uphold that termination even if the guy wasn't near retirement. We won. Due to the way the pension worked, the fact he left before he reached 55 led to a massive pension discount, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Oh, by the way, his offense was filling up his car with gas using company card because he had left his personal card somewhere and was going to run out of gas. On the other side of the coin, I had many employees do insane things like hide and sleep at work for 40 hours, eat a 30,000-gallon gasoline spill, fighting, death threats, etc. who all got their jobs back through arbitration. Right before taking my bar exam in Germany, I was working in a small law firm as a law apprentice. There was one case which was given to me because it was considered unwinnable, but the client insisted on pushing through. The case was about an elderly lady who sold her cat because she was too sick to take care of her. The buyer of the cat, our client, a rather wealthy lady, took the cat to the vet right after buying it. Apparently the cat needed €2,000 worth of surgeries. She hired us to collect those $2,000 from the old lady. She was really an unpleasant woman to say at least. She acted without even the slightest bit of remorse or empathy. She knew exactly in what situation the old lady was, because she was the one who informed us about it. Nevertheless, we won the case pretty quick even though our client didn't have a leg to stand on. I had a misdemeanor stalking case once. Client wanted a jury trial, so we did that and I had to question the poor girl who was getting harassed by this guy. The jury came back with a not guilty verdict, and my client turned to me and said incredulously, "They found me not guilty? Yeah, that case." Seeing lots of armchair lawyers in here, but I can tell you the cases we often wish we lost, the ones where clients don't pay their damn bills. Actually getting paid is one of the most stressful parts of practicing. Not a lawyer, but when I was a paralegal, my boss got a sex offender acquitted of the most serious charge of first-degree sexual assault. We had a confession he'd given to our firm's hired shrink locked in my boss's desk drawer. During the trial, the lawyer had me, at the time a woman in my 20s, sit directly beside the perv so the jury could see I wasn't afraid of him. He insisted on taking the stand. During his testimony, I casually turned around to look at his wife. On her face was etched a look of horror. She, who knew him best, could tell he was lying. Up to that point, I guess she'd believed his story that the teenaged employee was just after his money. I felt so gross after that and switched to real estate and refinance law firm. Lifelong public defender. Here, none. I will also say that my feelings for a client are rarely impacted by what they are accused of having done. I've had accused murderers whom I enjoyed working with. I've had accused shoplifters I've wanted to strangle. Client hired IT consultants from another consulting firm. The firm basically found qualified people and rented them out. Sort of like a recruiter, but they get fees forever. Common in IT consulting. Client eventually thought he was paying too much, even though he agreed to it, and stopped paying. He owed $200K. In NJ, you need to be licensed as a consulting firm. If you're not, you can't sue for your unpaid bills. They sued anyway. Tried to argue some loopholes. We won. Client paid nothing beyond my legal fees. Was I happy I won? Meh. Gave me a great story. Great for my reputation. Doesn't feel great helping out a douchebag though. I'm an underling who had no role in being able to reject the case. So that was a little bit of a consolation at least. Best comment of the day. I can't really complain about the lawyers. Their job is to do it by the books, so in the end, I can't expect them to only care about the clients, and to also care about pay as well as whether or not a client should have gone free or gotten anything. They are extensions of court justice, different from true justice, since a lot of times the good don't win in court, not embodiments of forgiveness and mercy, despite how much you can tell they want to be in a lot of cases. It's literally their jobs, and beaten into their heads, so I can't hate them. I can only dislike the institution itself, not the people. On the other hand, I don't blame the ones on here who quit practicing entirely because of truly unjust cases. It's honestly the reason I went into psychology and not law like my mom expected me to.